Hello guys, welcome back. In today's episode, we are going to be talking about one of the most important topics I might ever talk on, and I know that that's kind of setting a really high bar, but you know, I really stand behind that statement. Today we're going to be talking about boundary setting healthy and strong boundaries to keep you sane and happy and healthy and whole and thriving. That's what we talk about here together. It's how do you live a life in which you're thriving, in which you're being your best self. And to really live our best life, we have to become best buds, really good friends with boundary setting. So if you want to learn more, follow me to the other side. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Luz Gonzalez Show. We talk about how to live your best life. My name is Luz Gonzalez and I am your favorite peak performance coach. I work with people to have you really rise to meet the next level you, to go to the next level, and we do that through three main ways. One is having you really step into your power, owning your self-agency, really standing for all that you are. Number two is rising to meet your full potential. We're not here to just merely go through the motions and could just kind of like keep our head down and like do the thing you're supposed to do. No, we're here to grow into the most epic version of ourselves. And number three is really every day taking courageous action. So nothing matters if we're not taking action. And the thing is, it's not going to be easy, right? Sometimes we're going to be, I think, a little bit afraid or uncertain, especially when it comes to boundary setting, right? What we're going to be talking about is all about being courageous. It takes tremendous courage to set boundaries, but it also, setting boundaries means you are rising to meet your full potential, because that means you're really expressing your needs, and your needs are important, and you're owning your power. And so across all three, setting boundaries is just so absolutely important. And you know, I've been thinking about doing this topic for probably months, and you guys know that I just moved to Texas and it's been like crazy. I'm gonna be traveling tomorrow. So make sure that you're following me on all the social media. All the information will be in the comments below, and in the comments in the description below. Do leave comments as you guys engage with this content. I'd love to, you know, whenever you guys watch the videos, I see your messages. So just a quick thank you note for being here, being part of the journey with me. And so, yeah, so I'll be traveling, and so it's been crazy busy, but this has been on my mind for so long, and it's been on my mind for multiple reasons, right? Being so busy, moving to Texas has meant just so much on my plate. Before coming here, I was putting together an event, I was launching a program, which if you haven't already signed up for, you should totally sign up for, because it could change your life. It's transformative, it's epic, it's amazing. Information is also in the description. And you know, moving states is like just takes so much time, and now I'm here, loving it and settling it in. And so there's been a lot on my plate. And I know that for the people who watch, you know, or listen to the show, you all have a lot on your plate, whether it's being a mom, whether it's being a dad, whether it's being a CEO, whether it's, you know, you're running your startup, whatever it is that you're doing, you're managing a team and you're trying to get better. There's a lot on your plate. And so many people that I encounter struggle. I mean, let's be real, struggle with setting boundaries. And I used to struggle as well. I didn't even know what boundaries were. So let's talk a little bit about my journey with setting boundaries. And so you guys know I'm not here to paint a rosy picture about life or what it means to be, you know, in peak performance. So I'm a peak performance coach, which means I work with people so you're really operating at the highest level of your potential. And to do that, you really have to set boundaries, because otherwise you're going to be saying yes to a lot of things you actually don't want to say yes to. And so for me, being a peak performance coach doesn't mean that things are always perfect. It's life, guys, right? Like life happens. And so For me, one of my values, one of the things really important in my coaching and in my brand and in the work that I do and in my relationship with you guys is just being real, because I know that I have learned the most when my mentors, when the people that I learned from, when they shared some of like the real things they went through, and I was just like, you know what? I want to do that as well in my own coaching, in my own programs, etc. And so for me, I grew up in a household where I don't think that boundaries were like enforced a lot. They're, you know, like, I'm Mexican, so my Mexicans in the house, maybe you were also hit by the chancla. For my Americans, the chancla is, if you don't know what a chancla is, it's like a rubber flip-flop. And that rubber flip-flop, it's like deadly. And so, you know, whether it was screaming, whether it was, you know, like the rubber flip-flop, the chancla, we didn't grow up as kids. And so many of these things are put together, created, like your foundations are sort of like being set as you're a little kid. And then as adults, it's our job to like work through all that stuff. And that's part of your growth journey. It's working through it, right? And I've been able to work through all of it. I mean, like, definitely not all of it. I'm not like Buddha, but work through a lot of it. And so, you know, growing up, definitely we had that. I adore my family. So one of my favorite mentors, he says, you know, you choose your friends and your partner very, very carefully, and your family you love unconditionally. And so in my own life, I needed to learn how to just be like, well, my family isn't perfect, and maybe yours isn't either. Like, I know that, you know, there were like some dynamics, and still are, where I'm like, whew, well, that's not lovely. And for me, that's where boundaries needed to come in. And so for me, it really started with my family and having to have boundary setting and boundary conversations with them. But then it also really, it kind of goes into everything, right? So if you don't set boundaries, or if you're not taught how to set boundaries within your family, and, you know, or when you're a little kid, whoever you grew up around, then you're gonna have to learn at some point, and we're gonna have to put these tools into practice. And I'm gonna be going over things that you can do to actually set strong and healthy boundaries. So somebody said that, you know, boundaries are they're not like walls. They are doors. They are doors that let people know where they can come in and how they can come in, right? It's the code of conduct that to be in my life, these are the rules that must be followed if you want to stick around. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to reinforce my boundaries, and you're not gonna get to play and be part of my life. And so, you know, because I don't think I was raised with those boundaries, what it meant, like with my first boyfriend, it was like all relationships, right? And being a realtor, all relationships are going to be dynamic, and there was a lot of good there, and there were also a lot of like very toxic elements of our relationship. This was my first relationship, and one of them was like boundary setting. I didn't know how to set boundaries within relationships. I didn't know how to set boundaries with friends. Heck, I didn't know how to set boundaries at work. And maybe you find this to be the case for you as well. I know that, you know, so you guys know part of my story. I went to law school, and my background is international human rights and international criminal law. And I thought that to change the world, I was going to be doing this legal work. And then what I found myself really experiencing, because we were working on some of the darkest cases in, like, you know, human history, just like the darkest things you could imagine having to think about, to deal and process, like that, those are the cases I used to work on. And so that does something to you where it really impacts you. And so I had all these questions in terms of boundary setting within my family, with dating relationships, at work, even in my choices of what it meant for me to dedicate my life to, like what career I was going to choose. And so let me tell you about how I first learned about setting healthy boundaries. And so I've spoken about my love coaches, I think a lot, because that was the first coaching experience that I had. That was many, many, many years ago, and again, completely changed my life. And so what I realize now is that for people who don't set strong boundaries, when someone around you sets a boundary, you get affronted and you're like, what? Who the hell do you think you are, not making yourself available to me all the time when I want and doing exactly what I want the way I want it? And so with my love coaches, I remember I signed up for this program, right? I just paid more money than I had ever paid in my life for like almost anything, but I was so committed to being a strong partner in my relationship that I was just like, here's the money, I need to get better, I'm committed to do the work, and I'm willing to be uncomfortable trying on this new perspective. And that's what you need to do with coaching, right? When you're doing coaching, you're expanding your perspective, your way of seeing, your way of understanding, the habits that you bring into your day-to-day. And so I was having to do the same. And so my coaches, they're awesome, right? They've been in this beautiful relationship for something like, I don't know, 16 years, and they're married and they're just so in love and they have hots for each other. And in our coaching program, they set boundaries within their own relationship, and being our coaches, they set boundaries with us. So one of the first boundaries was like, we couldn't date for 9 months. And so another thing that they implemented was in our program, they had very strict times when we could reach out to them and how we could reach out to them. And being a person who didn't ever set boundaries in my life or didn't really know how to, I remember being affronted when my coaches set boundaries and were like, hey guys, yes, we're available to you, but we're not available to you 24/7. Now, what you have to remember, or what I would have to explain, is I came from the way of thinking, and this is kind of an epidemic across the world. And so you might be of this thinking as well, that we always need to be making ourselves available to everyone else's wishes 24/7, being available to their whims and wants at the, drop of a hat. And my coaches were like, no, that's cute. We don't do that. We love ourselves and we take care of ourselves and we know our priorities and we know what's important. So this is exactly when you can reach out to us, and this is how you can reach out to us. And, here's the program, and we feel totally confident we're going to change your life. And this is the program. And they would keep saying, trust the process. And I was like, blah, what do you mean trust the process? And so I didn't like this whole thing of somebody setting boundaries against me wanting their time whenever I wanted it. And it took me so much time and coaching for me to get comfortable with setting my own boundaries and learning how to respect other people's boundaries. And now being at a point where somebody reinforces a boundary or shares a boundary with me and I'm like, oh yes, you did. That's awesome. You're taking care of yourself. I so respect that. I so respect that you're setting a boundary. High five. Thank you for sharing your boundary. Thank you for letting me support you in supporting yourself and loving yourself by respecting that boundary. This is lovely. But that took a lot of time. And so let's talk about how boundaries represent themselves in our day-to-day lives, how boundary setting or not boundary setting might look for you. So I made some notes here just to make sure that we have everything we need. So here's what boundary setting looks like in real life. When and how often you check your email, when and how often you check messages that other people have sent you, and on what platforms, when you say no to things that you really want to do, but you say no because somebody else wanted to do something else. Being on 24/7, making yourself available to the world 24/7 because Why? Allowing other people to disrupt you while you're working because they have a question, your calendar, not feeling like you're in control of your calendar because everybody else's wants and needs are more important than your own, and you hate the cold, but your partner loves ice hiking. I don't know if that's a thing, but just made it up. And you go ice hiking even though you hate the cold because you want to please somebody else. So these are examples, some of them silly, but these are examples of how not respecting our boundaries or just having these issues with boundary settings, how that can look like in our lives. Now, where are boundaries? Boundaries are everywhere. If you have a relationship with another human being, or even with any sort of institution, if you have a job, if you have any sort of relationship at all, there are going to need to be boundaries there, healthy, strong boundaries that allow everyone to respect themselves and potentially the organization that you are, a part of. And so a reminder, when we think about boundaries, we need to remember that boundaries are not a reflection of us judging other people as much as honoring ourselves, honoring our wants and our needs. So let's go through a list of just basic rights that I feel I shouldn't have to go over, but I probably do. And so let's just go over them just to be super clear on these basic fundamental rights that you have because you are a human being who is breathing that pertain to your boundaries. So let's go over them. You have the right, hear me out on this one. Can I get an amen, a hallelujah? You have the right to say no without feeling guilty. Right? I know that one for me was huge. But let me say that one again. You have the right to say no to something you do not want to do or want in your life, something that does not meet your standards, because you are in charge of your life. You are the boss of your life. You are the captain of your life. Whatever you want, you are responsible for your life. You are in charge of your life. You get to say no to something that doesn't serve you without feeling guilty about it. The same thing is going to be true for you get to say yes to whatever you want to say yes to without feeling guilty about it. So let's let go of that guilt and that shame. I made a post not so long ago on Facebook, I'll post it below, about how shame and guilt is not serving anyone or anything. So let the shame and the guilt go. You have the right to be treated with respect. You have the right to make your needs as important as anyone else's. That includes your kids, that includes your husband, that includes your business partner, that includes the closest people in your family. Your needs, hear me out on this one, your needs are as important as everyone else's needs in your life. No one else in your life, even if they're going through a hard time, their needs are not more important than yours. You have the right to make your feelings be as important as everyone else's in your life. If you haven't read the book, Difficult Conversations, it's not about boundary setting per se, but it totally opened my eyes to this concept that oh my God, my feelings are important as well. And I have the right to, I get to say that my feelings were hurt or just express how I'm feeling regardless of the situation, regardless of the intent. I get to say, you know what? I feel hurt about this, or I feel sad about this. You have a right to own your feelings. You have a right to feel your feelings. Your feelings are just as valid as anybody else's feelings. You have the right to not meet other people's expectations of you and your life. I'm gonna say that one again. Also, you have the right to not meet other people's expectations of you and your life. Guys, this is your life. You're not like, this is your life. You're the captain. You're like in charge. It's your responsibility to be happy. It's your responsibility to be thriving. It's your responsibility to be healthy and all the things in abundance. So yes, you get to decide. You get to be in charge. You get to, like, okay, so you didn't meet your mom's expectations of, I don't know, you being a doctor or a lawyer? That's all right, because it's your life. You get to not have to meet other people's expectations of you in your life. Finally, you get to decide what is important to you, what lights you up inside, and prioritize those things without having to apologize for it or making yourself wrong for it. So, that on its own, that could have been like whoosh, huge for you. So let me talk a little bit about how we're gonna get into like the things that you can actually do. Let me talk a little bit more about what boundaries look like from, you know, before lose to after lose, what they look like for me. So you guys have some examples of what strong, healthy boundaries look like. So I spoke about how in the past, you know, with my family, there really wasn't boundary setting, and there was, you know, like emotional, I know from my end, I would feel overwhelmed, and I would feel sometimes like, made to feel guilty about whatever. And at some point when I owned my power and I was like, I'm an adult and I'm in charge of my life and I get to decide what I want to do and what's important to me, and these things are important to me, and that's what I'm going to have in my life. When people weren't walking through that door, following the code of conduct that was necessary for people to be in my life, whether it was family, whether it was a partner, I'd have a conversation with that. Right? So you allow people to respect your boundaries. You help people respect your boundaries, know what your boundaries are. We're going to talk about that. But you respect your boundaries. And so what it meant for me was having conversations with, you know, dear family members saying, that behavior, while I love you, I do not condone or accept that behavior. That will never, ever, ever fly around me. And I love you. And that doesn't mean, just because I love you, doesn't mean that this behavior is acceptable. And these are very, very close people in my life. You know, whereas before I never would have imagined saying these types of things. Now, like, people know, no, I love myself too much. I've worked way too hard to allow anyone to bring any drama, any negativity, any disrespect, any of that into my life. Like, this is a circle of love and light and goodness and good intentions and positivity. And it doesn't mean you're living a Pollyanna life. No, it just means I have boundaries and I have settings. I have like standards of what it takes to be in my life. And if that doesn't work for you, as much as I love you, you don't get to play. You do not get to have a relationship with me if you aren't on board with this safe space that has been created, right? It took me years because I was not living in a safe space. It's allowing people to do like, to like guilt trip, like all the things, and no more. And so what it looked like as well, not just with family and with partners, what it looked like as well, and you know, you can set boundaries very lovingly, and that's how I set boundaries, but they're strong. These are strong boundaries that are not crossed. I also set strong boundaries on the professional level, right? Before, because of how I grew up and, you know, like going to the best universities, blah, 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 I thought that I just had to be on 24/7. That if my team, that if my boss, that if my employees, that if my company, whatever, if they needed me, there was zero time for me, and it was all about the company. It was all about the team. It was all about the project at work. It was all about, you know, school, whatever it was. There was zero space for Luz taking care of herself, and there was 100% for making sure that the entire rest of the world was taken care of and happy. Okay, let's have a conversation about how you are not the general. Oh, this came from my coaches as well. You are not the general manager of the universe. I now take that power away from you. Whoop. All right. You guys love my sound effects. Okay. The power to be general manager of the universe has now been tossed. You are no longer general manager of the universe. That means that if you stop doing something or decide to do something that makes you happy, the world will not stop turning because of it. Shocking. I know. And so for me, what it meant professionally was that, like, if I didn't work 24/7, it was gonna be okay. The company was gonna continue. Not only was the company gonna continue, it was actually gonna do better if I took time to take care of me. And so now I am the queen of boundaries. Just like I'm the queen of self-care, I am on top of my boundaries. I set boundaries like a boss. I respect my boundaries, and it's just like all the difference. I feel so much more relaxed, empowered, in control of my life, and people know how to love on me and support me because it's just very clear, and I'm very kind in sharing what those boundaries and those standards are. And so let's talk about some clear examples of that. It means I am not on 24/7. My Sundays, you've probably heard this before as well if you've been part of, you know, the Loose Show for long enough. Sundays are me days. Who knows about this? My family knows this. Anyone that I'm dating knows this. You guys probably know this. My clients know this. Everyone knows in my life, if you've been around me long enough, you know that Sunday is me day. And this will change when I become a mom, but I will still have like me time. And my husband and I will work it out, and like we'll make sure that, you know, he has his me time and I have my me time, and we take care of the kids and we do all the things. But I get me time. And I so encourage you to make sure that you schedule. So for me, people know it's Sunday. Sunday is my me time. At work, we would have no meeting days, right? So we implemented this rule that Thursday, and I've worked with my clients and told them like, hey, you guys have too many meetings, right? Or so we would have a day that was like just no meetings at all for the company. Or when you do have meetings, having very strict standards of when meetings get made. So this is, again, how it shows up in my life. People want to jump on the phone all the time, and they are shocked sometimes when I'm like, yeah, the next time you can talk to me is in 3 weeks. Boundaries, hashtag boundaries. Yes, I'm sorry. I know that sounds terrible, but you know what? I'm focused. I know what's important to me. And okay, this is another quotable. Someone else's emergency, someone else's needs is not your emergency. You get to define what's important. It doesn't mean you're a jerk and you don't help people in need. You decide when something like, your family needs you or something. Of course, I have dropped things to be there for my family or for my friends, but especially if it's just someone who's like, hey Luz, I'll get a text like, hey Luz, can you jump on the phone? But for me, I'm like, hi, great to hear from you. What do you want to talk about specifically? What's on the agenda? So when you do have meetings, you're very strict about what you're talking about. I don't do meetings over 30 minutes unless it's for a very specific purpose. And if I'm doing meetings that are over 30 minutes, there better be an objective that's coming from that. So that's an example. What's another example? Dating, I have very, like I expect to be dating a gentleman. So if, within the first date, really, if that's not the case, then I'm like, lovely, you're a lovely person. This is just not what I'm looking for. It's just not a fit. What are other examples, quick examples? Oh yeah, this one is probably another one that's a little bit shocking for people. I do not have, you can't leave me a voice message. I also stopped sharing my phone number on my business card because you don't need my phone number. You can email me. Like you just met me. There's no emergency. And if you want to talk to me, you have to get on my calendar. Y'all, I have my family get on my calendar. Like, I put dates when I'm dating someone on the calendar. So I'm all about that boundary life. And so just, it makes you really be in control of your life and respect what's important to you, right? Like, I'm really focused on building this incredible business here, like the work that we're doing. And your dreams matter, and your life matters, and your priority matters. And so you have to get clear as to what that is. And so it needs to be scheduled. Okay, so that was like a little bit of an introduction, how boundaries have shown up in my life, how they might show up in your life, what your basic rights are, and then some concrete examples of what boundaries look like in my life. So now let's talk about things that you can do in your life to make sure that you are setting strong and healthy boundaries. So we're going to be going over 8 things that you can start doing today to implement stronger, healthy boundaries that will help you thrive in your life. All right, so number 1. At some point, we will maybe do a training. I don't know when this will get on the content calendar. Values. You've heard me talk about values a lot. So with my clients, we work on their value statement, and I would really recommend for you to know. So when we talk about values, there's 2 ways that values really show up. There's 1, the values that you're living into, and 2, the values that you want to live into. And so you need to assess both of those. Like, how am I actually showing up in my life? What am I valuing the most? And then for me to become the version of myself that I'm growing into, which we should always be doing. Number 2, reaching your fullest potential. You want to say, for this person that I'm growing into, what are his or her values, right? So for the 10 years from now version of myself, well, the values for her are blah, 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 blah. And so just knowing what values are important to you. I don't think this is shocking or surprising for anyone. I have a PowerPoint of my values just in case I ever forget or need a reminder, or I need to add one or change things up. I actually have a PowerPoint of my values and also my rules. So you can have values and then you have rules as to how it is that you live out your values. I'm super nerd and I own it and I love it. Yeah, personal development nerds out there. And so you want to know what your values are, and that's really going to help you know what is most important to you. Number 2, I want you to write down what makes you feel like you are thriving. So for me, and this is really connected to your self-care, right? So for me to feel like I'm thriving, I need to be running, I need to be learning, I need to be connected to good people who care about growing themselves. I need to have positivity in my life. There are 6 specific things that I need to feel like I need sarcasm and funniness. So specific things that I need in my life to feel like I'm really thriving and on top of it. And you want to know what that list is for you. And so by knowing what it is that you need to feel like you're thriving, and yes, you deserve to feel like you're thriving in your life. This is why we do the work that we do. So by writing down this list, you will have a clear understanding of what most matters to you and what's important and what needs to get on that priorities list. Number 3, you are going to practice and learn to say no. And let me start by saying that yes, you get to say no to anyone in your life. That includes saying no to your family, saying no to your kids, to your spouse, to your mom, to your boss, and you can say no without feeling guilty. Now, there are safer places if you are not very practiced in boundary setting, if you're not very practiced in saying no. I want you to go into safe spaces where you can easily say no. So maybe when you're at the mall and, you know, someone, like, their job is to provide a service, right? You can go somewhere where their job is to provide a service, and maybe they ask you, hey, do you want blah, blah, blah? And I just want you to practice, even if you want to say yes, I just want you to practice saying no. I want you to get really comfortable with that uncomfortable feeling in your stomach of saying no. So, I don't know, go to the mall, go to a restaurant, and just have a day of practicing saying no. Where, you know, like, hey, do you want to go? Or maybe even like call up a girlfriend and ask your friend or your guy friend to jump on the phone with you and to ask you a bunch of silly questions like, hey, do you want to buy a purple hippopotamus? And you just say no. I actually just came from an event where we practiced this, right? So there was an activity where we were selling something and we would have to go around the room and we would tell 6 people no, even if we wanted to say yes. And then one person would, the 7th person would get a yes. And so we went around the room and it was like, do you want to buy my program? Nope. Okay, thanks. Do you want? And so we need to get used to saying no, to respect our needs and our wants and our feelings. So have a day, a practice of just saying no and get, have it, see how it feels in your body and get more used to it. And when the bigger things in your life come that feel really uncomfortable for you to say no, and I still struggle with this, guys. It's not like I'm super, I just never struggle with boundaries or saying no. I still struggle with saying no and owning my truth. But the thing is, I practice it and I do it even when it's uncomfortable. I practice these little things. So you practice these small things where you get more used to and feeling into your body of what it feels like to say no. So when the big things come, you're like, I've done this before. This is really important to me, and no, that doesn't work for me. And it'll just be easier because you've been practicing saying no. Number 4, I want you to decide ahead of time what the consequences are of crossing a boundary with you. And so, okay, this is a silly one, but what the heck? With my family, so I'm not married yet because I'm waiting for a phenomenal, incredible man because, right, I've done the work and I just know I'm gonna meet this incredible person. It doesn't mean it's like we're perfect people, but I know that we're both gonna work really, really hard to create this incredible partnership. And so I've, purposefully stayed single because I have such a high bar for what it means to get into a relationship, a romantic relationship with someone. And so for the longest time, when I go home, my mom would be like, so are you dating anyone, right? And I want to have grandkids. And now my sister had a baby, so I'm like, woo, no more stress. But honestly, it drove me bananas. It made me it just didn't feel good inside. It just felt stressful. And so I had to have a conversation with my mom where the consequences of her continuing to cross my boundary were very clear. And I said, if you continue to ask me about my dating life or when I'm gonna get married and have kids, or that time is running out, or whatever it is, anything associated with that, anything that's not supportive of my choosing to not be in a relationship until I find an incredible partner, which, hello mom, that's exactly what you should be wanting for me. If I want to be married, I could be married, but it's not about just being married, it's about having an incredible marriage, right? An exceptional marriage. So unless you're doing that, if you mention this again, I am not gonna come home. I'm just gonna stop visiting. You're just not gonna hear from me. And so after a while, just stop mentioning it. And it just doesn't get brought up anymore. And she's learned to respect my boundary. And that's sort of a silly one, but it's also kind of an important one, right? Where I was like, no, this is actually really important to me. This is something that I've dedicated so much time to. Yeah, you're not gonna make me feel bad for a decision that I've made in my life for how I want to live my life and the only type of relationship that I will allow into my life. So make sure that you know what the consequences are for somebody, even somewhat as close as your mom, crossing a boundary that you've set. Number 5. So suppose someone did cross a boundary. Well, what do you do then? How do you have a conversation around, hey, this isn't cool. This doesn't work for me. So the best way to have these conversations, and you've probably heard this before, is using I statements. So I'm going to show an example of what you don't do and an example of what you do do. What we don't do is say, hey mom, you're a jerk. You're a jerk because you're like bullying me into just being into any relationship and you're just the worst. What you do say is, hey, so you use a nice statement and you speak about your experience and your feelings and you share with them, you know, how that's going. And so I would say something along the lines of, hey mom, I wanted to have a conversation with you, something that's really important to me. You know, when I hear you talking about, you know, this and that, how it makes me feel and my experience is this, right? This is how I feel. And I wanted to let you know that. And I wanted to let you know that if it continues to happen, I really don't feel like I can continue wanting to come home. And that really hurts me. It's really a bummer that rather than feeling really excited about coming home, I kind of start dreading coming home. And so then the other person doesn't feel like they're on the attack. They don't feel like they have to be, you know, defensive. And so how you share your experience, and that's exactly what you're sharing. It's I statements. This is, you know, this happens, and you keep it very factual. When this was said, this specific word or when the specific behavior happened, this is how it made me feel. And this is, you know, and you share that knowing that your feelings are totally valuable. And then if you have an understanding of what the consequence would be for you and, you know, for your relationship, you share that. So number 6 is helping people respect your boundaries. So what that looks like for me, for an example, is, so let's say at work, let's talk about at work boundaries. So everyone who's on a team or who, you know, I directly manage, they know that they cannot reach me on the weekends. I'm, you know, off communication doesn't mean that I'm not working on the weekend, just means they cannot reach me. Definitely they know about my Sunday me day rule. They knew about the Thursdays no meeting rules. And they also knew that if, you know, they weren't on my calendar. And so this is, you know, especially for the coaching that I do around entrepreneurship, it doesn't mean that like you don't support your team, but you get really purposeful. So you have your 30-minute daily meetings with your team, and that's where people bring all of the questions. And that means people need to show up and be prepared, and they need to be on time, because otherwise that opportunity escaped and you are focused, you're doing your work, right? And so for us, we would have all hands meetings where our employees would come ask us questions. For me as a manager, what it meant was I had my one-on-one meetings with the people that I was managing, and they knew that that was a time that we had to do one-on-one, and otherwise it was kind of like heads down doing work. I have heard this from so many people who are in the workplace. I just get interrupted all the time. Well, you need to set stronger boundaries at work. And so how do you have people respect your boundaries? Well, you need to share what your boundaries are. And to help them, well, you need to respect your boundaries. You need to adhere to that consequence every time that a boundary is crossed. Number 7, this kind of goes without saying, you need to respect your own boundaries, right? So we talked about that in the last one. So another example, when I was a teacher, I think that, so I was a teacher, a 5th grade teacher, and many times in the classroom, or, as a parent, you'll have this rule, but then you'll be like, oh, this once, we'll let it slip. But what happens when you do that is you can't be trusted. And that's the truth of it. Like, you need to be a person of integrity, right? Someone who can be trusted to respect yourself. And so if you say that this is a boundary of mine and that's something that's important, but then you allow people to just like not respect your boundary, well, then you're really not going to feel good about yourself, and you're not helping other people help you. So again, goes without saying, you need to know what your boundaries are, know what your priorities are, know what's important to you, and then know what the consequences of crossing those boundaries, not respecting a boundary, and then honoring those boundaries for yourself. So when things happen, having a conversation of, hey, this happened and that wasn't cool, and this is how it made me feel, and I just wanted to bring it up, and not waiting for things to fester, not waiting for it's like 6 months of like build up, and then you're like, I'm so upset. No. You address it on the spot. So whether it's, in a personal relationship or a relationship at work, you make sure that you address these things as they happen. And so make sure that you are honoring your boundaries, that you are honoring these delineations, yes, of where you said your boundary starts and where it ends, where you're like, that's not cool. That's not cool. And finally, number 8, I need you to schedule. I need your calendar to be your best friend in terms of honoring your boundaries. And so what that looks like is, scheduling that 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes every other day or, 1 hour a week for you to check in with your team that you manage. Maybe it looks like calendaring on your calendar as well and letting people know that Sunday is your me day and you don't do anything on that day that you don't want to do. Maybe it's putting on your calendar, and this has to happen, putting on your calendar time where you're just off and you get to guilt-free do whatever the heck you want, right? Whether it's watching a movie and respecting it. Okay, so if you had a meeting with, I don't know who's really important these days. Let's just say the Pope, because he comes to mind. Pick your most important person. It could be a celebrity. It could be, President Obama, the Pope. I don't know, like, you take your pick. The Queen of England. The Queen of England is, has said, or, Richard Branson has said, hey, we're gonna talk about something that's really important to you, and they have like wealth of knowledge to share with you. And would you miss that meeting? No. You are no less important than the Queen of England. You are no less important than Richard Branson. You are no less important. So you need to keep your schedule. You need to keep your date with yourself. So if you said, this time is off time, this is no technology time, this is time for me to just focus on this project at work, you need to honor that time because you said it was important for a reason and you need to stick to it. So we went through a lot. I knew that this was going to be long because this is just such a huge topic and it's so important, and I take this very seriously, and I hope that you too become a, boundary setting ninja in your life, because it will bring so much more abundance and space and ability to breathe and control, and you'll feel healthier and happier and more energized and loving, because when you fill yourself up from the inside out, you can't help but give that light and that radiance and that love to every other part of your life. So respect your boundaries. Make sure that you subscribe to all the things. Make sure that you're following me on social media. Make sure that you've signed up for my newsletter, and make sure that you've signed up for my monthly life coaching program. Next time we're going to be talking about planning, but go to the website where you will find what it is that the next session is on. And you want to be there because it's transformative work, it's life-changing world-class coaching that is affordable, and I would love to see you there. So let me know how it is that you are going to be setting boundaries in your life. What does boundary setting look like? And yeah, let me know how it's going. I would love to hear what sort of boundaries you are committed to setting in your own life. It's been a pleasure, like always. Sending you so much love. I will catch you again next week.